Hello and welcome back to some more legal hints and tips. Gav, as ever, thank you for joining us.
Nice to see you again.
Nice to see you, mate. What have we got today then?
So, I've got to say, Legal Corner is turning into Crash Corner at the moment. But we've got two videos today for the viewers. The first one, I have to say, it really sits close to my heart.
Okay.
I'll explain why when we jump into it.
Okay.
And actually, it might be worth just playing the video through, actually.
Yes.
I'll talk about it and why it's close to my heart, but if we play it through once or twice for the viewers, they can get a good idea as to what's gone on. So this is the A2. So it happened on the A2, Bexley Heath sort of way, we're East London. And the video that you've seen is a dash cam for a taxi driver.
Yes.
Now, he does well, okay? He does well not running our chap over.
I don't, the videos so far we've talked about, I haven't kind of jumped out my skin and let's be honest, some of them have been faster than this one, but I've got to say that this one kind of really, it took my breath away.
It's got the wow factor, hasn't it?
Yeah.
It's got the holy shit, what happened there?
Yeah.
The biker, when he phoned White Dalton, I spoke to him. And that's probably why it sits very close to my heart, because I was the first point of contact with this chap who'd gone through a pretty crappy situation.
Yeah.
And this has got a real twist to it, okay? So when this case came in, the biker, who will remain nameless because he's given me permission to use the video, but on the basis we don't identify him, he got knocked off by this Audi TT that was cutting across the lanes, and that car failed to stop, just left the scene. So no idea who that driver was, where they've gone.
Did they plead ignorance or was it?
Well, okay. Well, I'll get to that.
Okay.
I'll get to that because this is where it got interesting. So when the case came to me, we were trying desperately to identify the car and the driver. Mm-hmm. Now, I got wind of a police officer that attended the scene. He was a bike cop.
Right.
Okay. It's the Metropolitan Police. Okay. Now, I know they are having a really rough time at the moment.
Yeah.
Every other news article is Met Cop has done this, done that wrong,
Yeah, it's either BBC or the Met, isn't it? It's
one of the other. Yeah. And this copper, hats off to him. So he hears on the radio that there's been an accident involving a biker. He's a biker himself, and he says, I'll go around the corner to that job. Now, I have to say, was absolutely the key piece to solving this case.
Wow,
okay. And I met with him. So I said, look, I need to speak to you about this case. And I met him at Ace Cafe, actually, in London. And our coppers go anywhere for breakfast, like anywhere. So I met with him.
Did you pay for it?
I did.
Yeah,
I
okay,
did.
yeah, so free breakfast.
But also, I kept everything in writing to make sure that we were above board, and there's no property in a witness. You know, the other side could have called him if they wanted to. They didn't. I called him, and I thought he was absolutely key to solving this case. And it turns out he was. Now, that breakfast meeting went like this. I asked him what he did at the scene, and he obtained the video dash cam from the taxi driver.
Yeah.
They couldn't make out the registration number.
Of the
Audi TT. Yeah. They could only make out a few digits. So what he did, he went off to the ANPR Bureau, so that's automatic number plate recognition, and he asked them to do a geo search. Okay.
Is that for all hairdressers who own a Audi TT?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So and he says to me, look, between this 5-minute window on the A2 in Bexley, we've only got 5 vehicles that went through the cameras with those registration digits. Okay.
Yeah.
And he said, of those 5 vehicles, only one is an Audi TT in grey.
Bingo.
I thought, bingo, we've got it.
Yeah.
You know, he's got it, not me. Yeah. He's got it. And this is his evidence. So I'm sat there jotting down his witness evidence. And he decides to go and pay the registered keeper of that car a visit. Now,
so how long was that between the crash and the...
So he didn't go for a few days.
Right, okay.
Yeah. But he didn't need to because the DVLA hadn't updated the keeper details. It had been the same keeper for 5 years or whatever the figure was. And it was around the corner from the accident scene. So he turns up there and he knocks on the door And the lady comes to the door, and she's the registered keeper of the car.
Right.
So he says to her, look, I need to interview you about this, shows her the video. And she just flatly denies it's her. She said, look, I didn't knock anyone off the bike. If I did hit someone, I would have stopped. But that might be my car, might not be my car. That is my journey home, because I work on the other side of the A2. So he says, okay. Now, there's no criminal prosecution, okay? So he basically gives her a warning. He gives the biker a warning for what he thought was a bit of a tasty filtering.
I suppose it wasn't stationary traffic, was it?
No. I mean, I'm not sure about you, but I've always been told that if you're filtering, one of the safest places to be is between vehicles. Because cars don't just crash into each other.
Yes.
So if you're between car one and car two, arguably it's a safe place to be. You know, here we've got a problem because the bike is accelerating past, the Audi decides to accelerate past and then cuts him off in essence. So I then write to the Audi car driver and the insurer, okay? And what I get back is just horrific. They basically tell me that they can't prove it was her, I should go and do one. And actually, he was riding a hyper sports bike in the middle of winter. So, you know,
they really went to town.
They really went to town. You know, and he's on a GSXR 600. Now, I'm not, you know, it didn't have a supercharger on it. It's not a hyper sports bike, and the filtering maneuver looked perfectly normal to me.
Yeah.
So that I have to say probably got my back up a little bit.
Yes.
What we did then was basically sue the car driver. That's it. It was as simple as that. And we sued the car driver, and their proposition was, you can't prove it was us. That's it. That was their whole case. And don't forget, I've already interviewed the police officer, so I think I can prove it was them.
Yeah.
So off we go to court, and I wasn't available for the trial. So ordinarily, I would do the trial on a case like this, but I wasn't available, so I had to get a barrister involved. So a very traditional role for a solicitor is to prepare a case and then hand it off to a barrister for the trial. I had to do that in this case because I wasn't available. But it goes off the trial, and the issue in the case is, was that the correct driver? Were they driving at that date and that time? And I called the police officer a witness. I had to, okay, because I can't just put his witness statement in. I have to call him as a witness. And it goes before a district judge, who actually, he's a deputy district judge because he's a part-time barrister, part-time judge, and he's also sits in The Hague as a judge as well. Yeah, okay. I mean, very clever man. And after a trial, he finds that she was the driver of the car. He doesn't go so far as to call her a liar. He just says, you made an error. You just knocked someone off and you didn't realise, okay? The barrister, I remember him calling me on the day, sort of panicking about the fact that the police officer thought they were both to blame, partly to blame, and would this go 50-50? Now, I was completely unperturbed by that, because the defendants basically said, this is not us. That's all they said, okay? They didn't say, this is not us, but if you prove it was us, we're now alleging that you were partly to blame. If they'd said that, the judge would then have to battle with, is this a 50-50? Is it a 60-40? What did the biker do wrong? They didn't say that. They just said it's not us. So when we went to trial and proved it, on balance, it was her driving the car, we won 100%.
Nice.
Okay, so that was, and that, again, sat very close to my heart, because biker phones me from the outset. It took us a good 2.5 years to get to trial.
Wow.
Yeah, and that's quite normal. Yeah, it's quite normal. If you, I mean, I hate to keep talking about COVID, but there aren't extra courts, there aren't extra judges. So the delay that we had a few years ago because of COVID, we've still got now.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah.
So that's saying the wheels of justice turn slowly. Yes, they really do. Ultimately, good win for the biker.
What about injuries, just briefly? Was he okay?
He was walking wounded.
Okay.
And again, I come back to what the taxi driver did.
Yes.
You know, he had the thought process to think, I need to slam on the brakes here and swerve, because there was just a tumbling biker in front of him.
I mean, that's the first thing I thought was, legs, pelvis.
Very lucky biker, as in, you know, he got up afterwards. I mean, he went off to hospital to be checked over, but...
No broken bones?
No,
wow.
Injury-wise, we're going to go at the minor end. So walking, talking, one lucky chap.
Well done, Mr. Taxi Driver. So the next video we have for you is in London again. and it involves filtering, and it involves a vehicle leaving the scene. What do they call it, Miss?
Failing to stop.
Failing to stop.
Yeah.
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 So
Naughty,
over to you, Gav.
Oh, well, I was going to say naughty driver.
Naughty, yeah, very
naughty. Very naughty.
Actually, I will say, I remember that we were down at JHS and we were watching this video, and we were showing it to the lads in the workshop. Most of them don't ride on the road, and some of them were like, "Oh, they didn't." There was no blame to the bike, but it was like, "Oh God, that filtering in London." I will clarify, that's what you do in London, isn't it? That is it's perfectly legal.
Yeah.
And when we get to it as well, just actually right on cue, he's to the left, to the right side of the
bollard, the traffic bollard. Yeah.
So everything's legal.
Yeah, and I have to say, loads of bikers don't do that. They always go the wrong side of the bollard.
Yeah.
So hats off to him.
I got a careless driving for that.
Did you?
When I was 17, yeah.
Oh, that's a bit harsh.
I should have known you back then.
Yeah, should have. Yeah, we'd have backed that 100%. Yeah. So I remember that conversation in the JHS. It really divided opinion.
Yes.
The manner of his riding.
Yeah.
Now, I've got to say, in this case, there was no issue with his riding, no allegation.
No.
I mean, there's an argument that him overtaking on the zigzags was tasty riding. And, I mean, what the law says on that, you can pass vehicles on the zigzags,
Yes.
but you cannot pass the lead vehicle, okay?
The lead vehicle?
The lead vehicle, yeah.
What, the lead vehicle coming up to, that's
on the crossing, yeah. So
right.
you can move up to the crossing,
right?
But you can't pass. But again, take that with a pinch of salt. We're in London, there's standstill traffic, and there's scooter riders. That's why I say fair play to him. He went on the correct side of the keep left bollard.
Yeah.
But anyway, not an issue. It wasn't an issue because. Incredibly, the car driver that knocked him off. So you'll see a video there of the BMW, the front end of it. I think the bumper's hanging off.
Yes.
After it struck him.
Yeah.
The driver just sort of gets out, checks he's okay, and then gets back in the car, says, "I'll just move it up there, mate," and then leaves. So we've got no idea who he was. And the police went after him. The Met Police.
Because for failing to stop. Was that the key?
Yeah, well, okay. So there is no presumption in law that the registered keeper of a car is also the driver.
Yes.
Okay?
Yes.
So there was a case a few years ago called Cameron and Hussein where the lawyers got it wrong. The lawyers tried to sue an unidentified driver to begin with, and the court said you can't do that. They then sought to sue the registered keeper of the car, presuming, wrongly, that he was the driver. And in that case, it turned out the registered keeper was a made-up person. It was just a made-up name.
Yeah.
It didn't exist.
But you can still do that, can't you? It's crazy. You can literally put any name.
Yeah.
Really.
Yeah.
On a V5.
You could. Yeah. I mean, I think it's an offence for the when you register it.
It is, but I mean, criminals don't really give a fuck about it.
They don't. Well, they don't. Yeah.
No.
Yeah. Oh dear, I put a fake name on there.
Yeah. That's the least of their worries.
Yeah. Quite.
Yeah.
So this car driver, he moves out into the path of the biker. He's negligent. Clear and simple.
Yeah.
Because if you want to do a U-turn or a right turn, the duty's on him to make sure that it's safe to do so. And actually, I'll just stop there for a minute because there's a famous case called Davis and Schrogen, which was a U-turn case. Now, it was famous for all the wrong reasons, sadly. So the biker was riding an R6 from memory, Yamaha R6, and he's on the wrong side of the road, and he is just passing stationary traffic.
Right.
They're just stuck.
Yeah.
Okay. A driver in that queue of traffic decides he doesn't want to sit any longer, so does a U-turn.
Yeah.
Now, sadly, he does a U-turn into the path of the R6. The rider gets thrown off the bike, and the reason it's a very sad case is because the chin strap failed. Oof. So the helmet's popped off his head at the point of collision, and he ends up with really serious injuries. We're talking life-changing, debilitating injuries. Right. Now, that might explain why it went up to the higher courts, because the insurer for the car driver tried to battle the finding of negligence on the car driver. They tried to battle it, because if they managed to get a 50-50, let's say, they were going to save themselves millions of pounds, okay? But the higher courts just went, no, biker did nothing wrong. It's entirely down to the car driver. And interestingly, they talk about a U-turn.
Yeah.
They say a U-turn was an unusual manoeuvre, and the onus is on the driver to make sure that it's safe to do so. Okay. Yeah. So I talk about whether the car driver's doing a U-turn because he's stuck in traffic and he doesn't want to sit there, or he's doing a right turn. I'm not sure, but the fact remains he's moved out to the path of the biker. Now, car driver leaves, so the Met Police get involved. Now, there's cameras are everywhere.
Yes.
We've just seen a video, okay? They are only good to a certain extent, because in this case, unless you had a copper there at the roadside to collar the car driver, when the car driver got in the car and left the scene, the camera's useless. You know, you cannot trace that driver.
Yes, but in the same way that your previous case found ANPR cameras, surely there's some sort of
way to trace it.
Yes.
But I suppose then it comes down to how much money, effort, and time do they want to throw it in.
Yeah.
And what we're dealing with.
Was he okay?
He was okay.
Yeah.
He was well. He's walking wounded. I think you've seen him just sort of get up after the accident. So, you know, you are right. If we're looking at a fatality, and the car driver's left, I suspect the Met Police are going to throw a lot of money and a lot of effort at this.
Yeah.
This was a damaged RTC with some injury. Does it sit high on their list of items? No, not really. You know, they're dealing with stabbings, shootings in London. So that's not right. I'm not justifying what they've done, but that's just a fact of life. So the Met Police actually wrote to the registered keeper and said, tell us who the driver was. And the registered keeper didn't, just ignored it. So the police went, fine, we're now prosecuting you, registered keeper, for failing to ID. Okay? Now that carries with it 6 points and up to £1,000 fine.
Right.
So they got punished, you know. In fact, I'm looking at the court proceedings here. They were prosecuted for failing to ID the driver. That doesn't help the biker.
No.
Because the biker still doesn't know who the driver was. Now,
were they insured?
The car was insured. Now, and actually, this is where it took a little bit of a turn. So, normally, insurers just sort of, you know, not us. You can't prove who the driver was. We're not dealing with it. In this case, they did deal with it. Okay, I don't know why. I don't know what happened in the background. But they wrote to the lawyer at White Dalton on this case and said, look, we're going to deal with the case in full. So the biker was paid out, you know, for his bike, for his injuries, by the insurer. Now, if the insurer hadn't done that, let's say they'd taken a different stance and said, you can't prove it was our driver, our insured, this potentially might have to go down the MIB route. So the Motor Insurers Bureau, they have something called the Untraced Drivers Agreement, and this is an untraced driver. The driver's, you know, caused the collision, left the scene. It's less good, if I can say that. It's always better to sue an insurer. Really for two reasons. The MIB don't always pay out some damage claims because it's written down in their agreement that they won't. And if the bike's fully comp, they won't pay out for the bike damage. You are forced to then claim on your own insurance policy, which is a bit of a sickener, because if you think, well, I've been knocked off by you and now I have to claim on my policy, it shows as a fault claim for me. So in this case, a good outcome for the biker, because the insurer decided to play ball. We actually... I saw the Baron here earlier.
Yes.
In this case, we got a lovely letter from a Baroness. So,
did you?
In this queue of traffic in London was
Baron's missus.
Baron's missus. Yeah. Well, I won't name the Baroness, but we got a letter from the House of Lords, and
no way.
She wrote a letter to the biker saying, please, you know, send my best to the biker. I hope he's okay. And she referred to the car driver as that awful man. And he was an awful man because he left the scene.
Yeah.
So if you're watching this, you're very naughty.
Yeah. You awful man.
Yeah. Good.
Thanks, Gav.
No problem.
See you on the next one.